we grew closer to God while we were there. So, my name is Rachel. I'm a senior here. I've been here since kindergarten, in case you don't know me. And if I look a little familiar, I shared my testimony with everybody during a worship chapel a couple weeks ago. And I'm just super excited that I have this opportunity to share my heart with my fellow students, and just, I'm really grateful and I'm really excited. So I want to pray to kick things off. Please bow your heads with me. Dear Jesus, thank you for your love and for your faithfulness, God. Thank you for being a God that is with us, God. I just pray right from the start in this chapel that you will make your presence known among us, and that your spirit will fall upon everybody in this room, and that you will just fill this room completely with your spirit, God, so that we will become aware of your presence with us. God, I pray that you work on every single heart in this room, and that you will open our ears to hear what you have for us to say, God, and open our eyes to see what you're doing in our lives. I pray that we will know you more and love you more at the end of this, and that we will go closer to you, God. That's what we're here to do, and I pray that's what we accomplish, God. Not my will, not our will, but your will, God, be done today. And I pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Okay, so my testimony that I mentioned, I shared with you guys a time in my life for about 2 years where I struggled with some depression and anxiety and insecurity. And I struggled with that for about 2 years. And in those times where I was struggling and fighting and battling with this stuff that I was going through, it felt like I was completely alone. I didn't see God in those moments, and I felt like God wasn't with me. But now that I'm saved, and I can look back on those moments in those time in my life, and I knew God was there. God was there the entire time, and the whole time that I was pushing him away, he was still pursuing me in love, even though I didn't see it in the moment. And now that I have a little bit of perspective, I can see that for sure. And now that I'm saved and I'm doing life with Christ, he is still pursuing me with that same type of love. And God is still walking with me step by step every single day, holding my hand through everything. And that's what I love about our God. God is so personal with us. He really is just like a father. It says in Psalms 37, 23 through 24, that God delights in every detail of our lives. And even though we stumble, we will never fall, because the Lord is holding us by the hand. And I was thinking, what other God that people believe in is like that? What other God is so personal and wants that relationship with us, wants to literally do life with us every single day and cares about every detail and hold our hand through everything? What other God is like that? God is so personal. And we know that God is called Emmanuel in this book, which means God with us, because he is faithful and he is loving. God is constant. God is truth in a world full of lies. He's an anchor. He is a foundation that we can actually hold on to in this world. God is a foundation. Because we know that we all have different situations in our life that we go through. We all have our own realities. And those realities are definitely true. Those realities are true. The pain that you feel is valid. The pain that you experience is true. There's nothing false about that. But our situations that we deal with aren't permanent. They're always changing every day. And you can't hold on to that, because everything that we try to hold on to in this world are like crumbling ledges and footholds that just fall through. Just because you have an F in math class right now doesn't mean you're going to have a F in math next quarter. Just because you get fired from your job doesn't mean you're going to be jobless forever. It doesn't mean you're never going to get hired again. Because our situations are always changing. But God is never changing. It says in Psalms 18:2 that God is a rock. God is our place of safety. That's what it says in Psalms 18:2. That we can hold on to him when everything else in our life seems to be going crazy. And so sometimes we just look at this cup. That is our situation. We stare at it, we worry about it, and we think, oh my gosh, this is lasting forever. When is this ever going to change? But if we would just look up from our cups and we look to Jesus, who is standing right in front of us, who is always there, God with us, Emmanuel, God is always there, always faithful. If we would just look up from our cups and look to him instead. So oftentimes we just stare at our situation. So how do we know that this book is true? And how do we know that God really keeps his promises? How do we know that God is who he says he is? Well, if you open up this book and you read about the different people, there's many different people in this book. And they all experience God's faithfulness. They all experienced it. And so you can ask Israel, you can ask David. You can ask Joshua. You can ask Daniel, because God made promises to them that he kept. And you can read about it, and you can see God's perfect, faithful track record. Because he's a promise keeper. We can see that clearly when we read this book. And so speaking of Daniel, I mentioned Daniel. I actually want to talk about him a little bit, because Daniel paints a beautiful picture of what it looks like to be a Christian. He is steadfast. He keeps his eyes focused on the Lord, even when the world around him is going crazy. He keeps his faithfulness in God's promises and his truth that he makes to him, because he believes God is who he says he is. And so we can see this all the way from Daniel chapter 1 through Daniel chapter 12. And let's focus in a little bit. We're going to look at Daniel chapter 1 first. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he's in reign of Babylon right now. King Nebuchadnezzar, it's kind of hard to say, he's looking for strong, young, healthy, good-looking young men to be in his service. He's on the look for the people in the kingdom so that they can serve the king. And so, of course, he finds our boy Daniel to be meeting all these requirements, and a couple of his other friends as well. As you may know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So he finds those 4 guys to be fitting all these requirements. He chooses them and some other men as well. And before they can actually go into the service to serve the king, they have to go through this little training process. And the king creates a meal plan for all these men to eat so that they can be stronger and healthier and better nourished. And so that's what he does. He makes this meal plan. It consists of like meat and wine and all this different stuff. But Daniel and his friends, they look at this meal plan and they're like, that actually directly violates the Torah, which we follow. That directly violates what the Lord tells us that we need to eat and fill our bodies with. So they ask the chief of staff, they say, hey, is it okay if we just have vegetables and only drink water for 10 days? Just 10 days, just as a trial, to see how we are compared to the other men who are on the king's meal plan. And the chief of staff is a little bit hesitant about this at first, but he agrees to let them do this for 10 days. So for 10 days, they just have vegetables and drink water instead of doing the meal plan, the king's meal plan. And it says in verse 15 of Daniel chapter 1, that at the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young men who had been eating the food assigned by the king. And so right off the bat, we see that Daniel keeps his eyes focused on the Lord and what the Lord is telling him. He's trusting, yes, I know that you're telling me this because you want what's best for me. I'm going to follow that. I'm going to trust that. And he does. And God clearly blesses him for that. He gives him everything that he needs to be. So right off the bat, we see this picture of staying true to God and being blessed for it, because God shows up. And now we're going to skip to Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6 is what we may know as Daniel and the lion's den. So in this chapter, King Darius is now in reign. King Darius is reign over Babylon, and he loves Daniel. It says in verse 3 that King Darius found Daniel more capable than any of the administrators and high officers in the kingdom. And so he just kept moving his way up, Daniel did. And this, of course, made all the other administrators not like him so much. They weren't a big fan of Daniel because he made them look better, you know? So they were like, we are going to try to get rid of Daniel. And that's exactly what they tried to do. And this is what I love about this. It says this in verses 4 and 5. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way of Daniel was handling government affairs. But they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded that our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel would be in the connection with the rules of his religion. That's awesome. That Daniel was such an amazing person that they literally couldn't find any other dirt on him than to attack his faith, because they knew if it came down to it, he would always choose God above everything else. So that's exactly what they did. They went to King Darius and they said, hey, we have this idea that for the next 30 days, everyone in the kingdom can only bow down to you, King Darius. We can only bow down to you, worship you, and pray to you. Just for the next 30 days. And here's the thing. If they don't do that, we should throw them in a lion's den as punishment. And King Darius thought about it for a second. He was like, that idea. So he made that an official law that can't be broken or can't be taken back. He made that a law and sent it out so that everybody knew the news that for the next 30 days you can only bow down to King Darius. But what I love about this is that when Daniel found out about the new law, he didn't waver at all. He didn't waver one single bit. He kept his eyes focused on the Lord. It says in verse 10 that he went to his room with his windows open toward Jerusalem, and he prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. So we see that nothing in Daniel's life changed, even though every single thing around him was changing. The new law was put in order. But Daniel still kept his heart set on Jesus. And so, of course, the administrators, they went and they caught Daniel for this. And they busted him, and they went and they tattled on the king. They tattled and told him. And Daniel was forced to be thrown into the lion's den. And this is what it says in verse 17. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his royal seal and the seals of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. So that no one could rescue him. And that is so much like our life sometimes, isn't it? It's so much like our life. When the world will try to roll the stone over your situation and say, you're stuck. You're not getting out of that. That's exactly what the king did to Daniel when he rolled the stone over the mouth of the lion's den. He said, no one can rescue you. That's what they did to Jesus when he died. He was put in the tomb, and they covered the tomb with a stone, and they guarded it and said, you're going to stay dead. You're going to stay dead. You're not going to rise in 3 days like you said you would. And the world tried to change that, but obviously we know that Jesus came out alive. Because God has control over your fate. Only God. And we know that if we read on in Daniel chapter 6, that Daniel makes it out as well. And so we can read this in Daniel chapter 6, 21 through 28. It says that when King Darius came to check on Daniel the very next morning, this is what he said. Daniel answered, long live the king! My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty. The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the dead, and not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God. Then the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. He had thrown them into the lion's den along with their wives and children. The lions leaped on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. Then King Darius sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of lions. And so Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus, the Persian. God literally shut the mouths of lions for Daniel. Daniel didn't have to do anything. Daniel didn't miraculously, heroically kill the lions with his own hands. No. God did that for him. He shut the mouths of the lions for Daniel. And I'm sure Daniel was a little bit scared. I mean, lions have pretty big teeth, right? I'd be scared. But I'm positive that Daniel knew that God was with him in that lion's den. And he knew that God was going to take care of him because he believed that God was who he says he was. And so, see, the beauty of being in situations like that, being at the lowest of the low, being in the lion's den with lions all around you in the dark, is that you can choose to focus on that. You can choose to focus on the lions. You can choose to focus on your situation. Or you can look up to Jesus, who brings light and hope to your situation. Because the beauty of being at the lowest of the low is that you can't look down anymore. You have to look up. You have to look up to Jesus. And that's the beauty of being in those situations. And so when you're dealing with your parents' divorce, when you didn't get into the college you wanted to get into, and nothing seems to be going right for you, when you're struggling with anxiety and and depression and insecurity, you can choose to focus on that. You can choose to worry about that. You can keep asking yourself, how do I fix this? What can I control? What can I do in this situation? You can ask yourself those things. But what you should be asking is, and saying over yourself, is that God can fix this. God has control over this situation. And God can help me. Because it says in Colossians 3:2 to think about things of heaven, not of earth. So when you find yourself in those situations, you should be always looking up and thinking about God's ability and having confidence in God's ability and not anything that you can do, but looking to God in those situations. And so every time you find yourself in that, you should be looking to the Father who delights in every detail of your life. And just say that I trust you and just be carried in every situation through that. Because to look at the problem feels and looks like worry and stress. But to look to God looks like joy and peace that's not dependent on your circumstances. Because you can have joy every single day. You can have peace no matter what you're going through. Because that all comes from a close personal relationship with God and relying on His strength, relying on His words, having that as your source of hope, anchoring yourself in that. Because you can have joy and peace every single day. And so when we're in the lion's den, what do? How do we fight? What do we do when we're in that lion's den? I have 3 things for you guys today. Number 1 is be still and know that God is God. Be still and know that God is God. How much of you guys ever bet that Daniel was extremely still in that lion's den, physically and spiritually? I wouldn't move. But he didn't move spiritually either. He knew that God was God. He trusted that. He trusted that God was with him. Number 2 is know God's words. How are you supposed to anchor yourself in something that you don't know? How are you supposed to trust promises that you don't, if you don't know what they said? You have to read this book. You have to know God's word and hide it in your heart so that when you find yourself in those situations that comes to the surface, Daniel knew God's word, and we see that all the way starting in chapter 1. And number 3, I have pray. Because worry doesn't do anything. If Daniel did nothing but worry in that lion's den, it wouldn't have changed the fact that he was in the lion's den. It wouldn't have magically brought him out of that. He would just been in the lion's den with a bunch of wrinkles on his forehead. Because worry changes nothing, but prayer changes everything. And God listens to those who pray to Him and call out to Him for help. And right now, actually, we're going to have some time for prayer. We're going to get into some groups. Keep it small. Keep it with the friends that you really trust. Groups of 2 or 3. With some friends that you trust. And you're just going to take the time to be a little bit vulnerable. Share the lion's den that you're facing right now. Share the pain that you're feeling with your friends. And then after you share, you're just vulnerable for a second, I want you guys to pray over your situations. Pray encouragement over your friends. And pray for the situations that you guys are facing. And I'm going to pray to close this out. So you guys can go ahead and find your groups.